was she that her cousin only recognised her by touching her mind. Lily was barely 14 and beautiful in the same way her mother had been, pale with almost white gold hair. Those things remained, but everything else was gone. She was dirty, covered in soil, blood and tears, and her blue eyes were fixed on a distant point. When Faith spoke her name, there was no visible reaction. Dad took off his coat and wrapped it around the girl. It was warm this summer, but she was shivering to the bone. All this time, as her uncle rubbed her shoulders and spoke her name, she made no sound, and no expression flitted across her face. Faith couldn't help making the mistake of looking down into Lily's mind. It was like teetering on an abrupt void, like a dream of falling. The abuse had been unremitting, physical, mental, and most of all upon the newly awakened seraph within her. The man who Lily only recalled as a massive shadow and menace had needed a guard on his opium den. Lily was a tool, and he had used her. Violating her body and the newborn seraph within her had been a game to him. He had broken her open and poured his will into her. The cruelness of that stirred Hoa inside Faith. He sprang up, roaring in her mind. The alien thoughts were suddenly wrapped around hers, a tangle of rage and unremitting panic, that someone had deliberately done this to one of their own. Faith struggled with the seraph's emotions, which were usually deeply buried. Hoa had never demanded anything of her before, but when he touched his compatriot inside Lily, his outrage knew no bounds. Slowly Faith straightened up and saw white-faced fear dawn on her father's face. "Your eyes, Curly." He clutched Lily to him. "They're golden." Everyone knew what that meant, and she would have panicked, should have panicked, but she felt nothing. Only Hoa mattered now. Seraph possession was something she'd feared all her life, but now that it was on her, she couldn't find the will to be afraid. Hoa cared little for the bonds of human society, what was right or what was proper. He wanted to punish the transgressor. Nothing would stand between him and that. So Faith ignored her father, instead reaching out once more to Lily's mind. Who did this? Unexpectedly her cousin jerked upright, grasping her hand. "He has more! He has so many more!" "The Trocadero Hotel." Hoa had snapped up the information. Somewhere in one of those gilded rooms, someone was melding the awakened to their needs, bending those recent dreamers to their own devices. It couldn't be allowed to continue. "Faith, don't!" Dad's cry of alarm was a long way off, for she was enmeshed in the seraph's power. Its cause was now her cause. The shamble of a building began to vibrate, its wood boards shaking against the restraint of their nails, the tin roof warping and buckling as the weather demanded in. Even the opium addicts noticed now, but fear was beyond them. They simply stared in mute appreciation at the undisguised display of real seraph magic. Through the glaze of the drug it must have been glorious and mystifying. Her dad threw himself over Lily as his eldest daughter became the centre of the storm. Outside, she could hear people begin to scream as the mild weather turned instantly to wild. It didn't matter to her. "They'll notice, Curly!" Dad yelled once more, desperately, into the teeth of the wind that was circling and battering the house. She knew who he was talking of. The ministry, the eyes, families standing gape-mouthed on the street corner, but she didn't care about that either. Why should she care what the sleepers noticed? It was by far more important that her people be saved. The house moaned once and then came apart. The iron roof peeled off and flew away like the wing of a great grey gull, while the walls blew flat in an instant. What this meant to the people in it, Faith didn't see, for she was already flying. The wind scooped her up as she raised her arms to it. It was the gale from the south, harsh, bitter, and more powerful than anything the young woman had ever felt. It whipped her hair and body, but each touch was magnificent. It filled her lungs with strength and laughter. Let the foolish creature that had turned on her people tremble. She was coming for them. The city's weather witch was free.